We talked about angles between 0 and 360 and finding their trig values. But what if we have angles that are negative or angles that are bigger than 360? How do we find their trig values? And this is where we need to talk about coterminal angles. Coterminal angles have the same terminal side. To find a coterminal angle, you need to either add 360 or subtract 360 or multiples thereof, or multiples plus or minus 360 from the angle. For example, looking at one angle that I used was cosine of 120. Okay, so here's an angle 120. If I were to add 360 to 120, 120 plus 360, I would get the angle 480. So what would 480 look like? Well, 480 would start here, go all the way around to 360, and then back another 120 degrees to 480. So it ends at the same place, so it has the same trig value. So cosine of 120 is going to equal cosine of 480. They're going to have the same trig value because they're going to have the same reference angle and the same labels on that reference triangle. If I subtract 360, so I'll do this on a different picture, 120 minus 360, that's going to be negative 240. So here's my 120. So that's this angle right here. But if I started at 0 and instead went this direction all the way around to here, this angle is negative 240. But they have the same reference angle. They have the same triangle. So I can also say that cosine of 120 equals cosine of negative 240. They are the same angle, just different names. So anytime you add or subtract 360 or multiples of 360, you're going to get the same angle. So how do you find what angle you want? What I suggest doing is if your angle is bigger than 360, subtract 360 until you get back to an angle that's between 0 and 360. Or if your angle is negative, add 360 until you get an angle between 0 and 360, and then just go back and do what we did earlier with the reference triangles. So let's say I have an angle of let's see here, what's a good example? Of 790, okay? So if I subtract 360 from 790, I hope this is a good example, I get the angle 430. Actually, I'm going to come up with a slightly different example. So hang on just a second. I was close to the example I wanted to use. I'm going to use the example 780. And what I should do with 780 is first subtract 360 from it. And if I subtract 360 from 780, I get 420, which is still bigger than 360. So I'm going to subtract 360 again from 420, and I get 60. Doesn't look like a 60. I get 60. So if I want to find the trig value for 780, it's the same as the trig value for 60. What I did was I started here, I went around 2 times, and then to 60. So 780 and 60 end at the same place, so cosine or sine or whatever I'm using, we'll just say cosine of 780 is equal to cosine of 60. So big picture here is that coterminal angles have the same trig values. So all you have to do is add or subtract 360 until you get between 0 and 360, until you get an angle between 0 and 360, then use reference angles. Okay, which we talked about in the previous video. If you didn't see that one, you should go back and look at the one about angles in standard position and reference angles.